The engine's sputter wasn't the sound of mechanical failure, but a death rattle. It died on that dark, rain-soaked Oregon road, and in the silence that followed, 5 shots rang out, each one a period at the end of a sentence written in betrayal. Just after 10 p.m. on May 19, 1983, a woman named Diane Downs, her white blouse a canvas of crimson, crashed through the doors of Mackenzie Willamette Hospital, wailing, her performance already beginning. Cradled in her arms was her 7-year-old daughter, Cheryl, already gone. Behind them, paramedics fought to save 8-year-old Christie, shot through the chest, and 3-year-old Danny, a bullet in his back. "A bushy-haired stranger flagged us down," Diane sobbed, the words spilling out in a rehearsed torrent. "He wanted the car. He just started shooting." It was a perfect, heartbreaking story, a mother's worst nightmare. But the truth was far more sinister. The monster wasn't a stranger. She was the one telling the story. To understand the depth of the horror, one must first understand Diane. She was not a figure of obvious malice, but something far more insidious. A romantic narcissist, a woman who viewed her life as a dramatic novel in which she was the perpetually wronged heroine. A postal carrier in Springfield, she was pretty, chatty, and could turn on a dazzling, girl-next-door smile that disarmed everyone. Her 3 children were not her world. They were her audience. Christie, the sensitive and quiet observer, Cheryl, spirited and fiercely independent, and Danny, the sunny toddler. But their roles were about to change. Diane had become obsessed with a married man, a fellow postal worker named Lou Lewiston, who wanted a life unencumbered by children. In the warped theater of her mind, her children were no longer supporting actors. They had become the obstacles to her grand romance, and the script demanded they be written out. The investigation, spearheaded by Lane County Sheriff's Detective Doug Welch, immediately snagged on the threads of her story. The crime scene on Old Mohawk Road was all wrong. There were no shell casings outside the car, suggesting the shooter was inside the vehicle. The bullet trajectories were bizarre, angling from the front seat toward the back. Diane's own account was oddly detached, her grief performative. She showed off the bullet hole in her car door like a badge of honor. She got a new perm. She went on dates. She gave television interviews, her eyes dry and calculating behind a veil of feigned tears. The police knew. They knew she owned a .22 caliber Ruger revolver that was now missing. They knew her story was a house of cards, but they needed a witness. And against all odds, they had one. Fighting for her life in the hospital, paralyzed from a bullet that had severed her spine, little Christie Downs began to communicate. A detective, his heart in his throat, gently asked the question, "Christie, can you tell us who shot you?" The little girl's hand, weak and trembling, reached for a pencil. She labored over a single, earth-shattering word on a piece of paper. She wrote, "Mommy." The trial of the state of Oregon versus Diane Downs was a national obsession, a chilling dissection of a mother's love turned lethal. Prosecutor Fred Hugi built an immovable case of circumstantial evidence. The missing gun, the impossible ballistics, the cold-blooded behavior. But the true drama unfolded in the human moments. The courtroom watched, hearts breaking, as a paralyzed Christie was wheeled in to testify. When asked to identify the shooter, a small, pale hand rose and pointed a definitive finger at the defense table. Diane stared back, her face a cold slate of contempt, scribbling a single word on her legal pad. Lie. Yet the trial's true turning point, its breathtaking climax, was orchestrated by Diane herself. Against all advice, she took the stand. For 2 days, she was brilliant. Charming, detailed, and defiant, she sold her story of the nameless, shaggy-haired assailant with the conviction of a born manipulator. She was winning. And then, under Fred Hugi's masterful cross-examination, he baited the trap. He dissected her fantasy life, her letters to Lou Lewiston, her utter lack of maternal grief. He backed her into a corner of her own lies, and the polished facade shattered. What emerged was not a grieving mother, but a furious, arrogant narcissist whose story was being questioned. The performance vanished, replaced by a smug, defiant smirk. The jury saw it, not just a liar, but a woman utterly devoid of the love she claimed defined her. In that unguarded moment, they saw the void where her soul should have been. The guilty verdict was a foregone conclusion. Life in prison plus 50 years. Diane showed no emotion, a final, fitting act of detachment. She would later escape prison, only to be captured days later, her vanity, her own undoing. The children she tried to erase found a new life. Christie and Danny, their physical wounds healed but their scars permanent, were adopted by the man who convicted their mother, Fred Hugi, and his wife. They were raised in a home filled with a love they were once denied. We fear the monster in the dark, the stranger in the shadows, because it is a simple, external evil. But the most profound terror lies in the familiar smile that hides a calculation, the loving touch that plans a murder, the mother who was the monster all along. If this story captivated you, then subscribe. The darkest tales are always true.